So now let's take a closer look at what is on the red teacher CD. After you input the activation code that's on the back of the teacher CD, you will eventually come to a menu that has 3 items on it: DynaNotes student course notes and lessons, the alignment document to the eligible TEKS, and finally, the student activity book answer key. First, let's go to the alignment document. When you click the alignment document, you'll actually open up a PDF file, which is great because then you can print it if you'd like to see the alignment information on paper. The alignment document is where you'll see what we mean by addressing 100% of the eligible TEKS. Listed in the alignment document will be the title of each activity that's assigned in the program, a list of which TEKS are targeted. Usually there's one TEK targeted, but sometimes, like Activity 6, addresses 7.6e and 7.6i, you'll have more than one TEK targeted. On the right-hand side, the standards themselves are listed word for word. And this just helps teachers to not have to go look up 7.2.a in a different document. They can come right here and see that that standard requires the student to extend previous knowledge of sets and subsets using a visual representation to describe relationships between sets of rational numbers. Also on the right-hand side are additionally covered TEKS. Certainly the math concepts aren't covered in isolation. They often touch on concepts that have already been learned, and those end up showing up within the activities. One thing of note is that these little red symbols, the same symbols that you'll see on the student course notes, indicate a standard that is a readiness standard. So you can keep that in mind as you're moving through the information. What does it mean for a program to cover 100% of the eligible TEKS? If you come to our teacher's workroom, we can give you a better idea. So let's go to 7th grade math, and you'll see there is this link that says the new 2014-2015 TEKS that will not be assessed. So essentially every standard that is eligible for assessment is covered, but there are a few standards that are not covered in the eligible TEKS. These are the standards that are ineligible for assessment. Many times you'll see that these standards actually are touched upon in the program, but we don't claim to cover these standards. But we do create this document so that it is easy for the teacher to see what additional items need to be covered during the year. Interestingly, in the case of grade 6 math, which is right up above here, there is no list of standards that will not be assessed. The reason for this is every single standard is eligible for assessment. So there's no difference between covering all the TEKS and covering only the eligible TEKS for grade 6 math. Certainly 94% to 100% of the TEKS are eligible for assessment. But these programs do focus in on the eligible TEKS in terms of 100% coverage. One other website I'd like to direct your attention to is learninglist.com. LearningList is a third-party verification company that looks at published materials and compares them to the standards which the materials are supposed to be aligned to. And they determine independently whether in fact those materials cover those standards. You can come to this website at learninglist.com and input your district name and look up your district to find out, yes, your district campus has subscribed, or no, it has not. And this is a great way to find access to not just alignment information and verification, but also editorial reviews and other products that are available to meet the needs that you have in your classroom or at your schools. DynaStudy is committed to transparency in its DynaNotes products. And so we have committed to take all of our new programs from here on out and submit them through learninglist.com so that our alignment percentages can be verified by a third party, as well as evaluated and shared with learninglist.com subscribers. Now, that is the first, I believe, 8 or 9 pages of this document. But then you'll actually come into pages in the PDF file that are the lesson views. These are the lesson views that you'll find in the other part of the teacher CD. Again, we appended these lesson views to the TEKS document just to make it easier for teachers to be able to print out the lesson ideas and look at them and make notes. So as you see, from page 9 to page 30, you have all of the lesson views in a PDF file. We already looked at the alignment document to the eligible TEKS, which has the lessons appended to it. But here on the first button are the student course notes and lessons. So looking at this is the first section of content, sets and subsets of rational numbers. And you can see that the CD opens up in the notes view. To switch from the notes view to the lesson view, simply click the button as such. And you can see the lesson view come up. What is in the lesson view? Of course, we still have our titles, but we list out here, again, the targeted TEKS, additionally covered TEKS, and now getting to brass tacks, the materials list. The materials list has to do with everything that's needed for either the warm-up or for any of the activities so that the teacher can be prepared. Next comes the warm-up question. In this case, the warm-up required a projector dry erase board, 1 black and 4 colored dry erase markers. There's 2 parts to the warm-up question. So in this case, the prompt says, prompt students to explore relationships visually among types of rational numbers. Visual representations reveal that numbers can belong to more than one subset. And then on the right is more of the discussion that you can lead with your students. What is a rational number? What are some types of rational numbers with examples? Use a color to represent each type on a -2 to 2 number line. Show, quote unquote, all members. So here's an example of what your number line might end up looking like. When you get to rational numbers, things get a little bit interesting. The note on the bottom should help the teacher remember to make this point. There are so many dots for fractional values at any scale that you look at that it begins to look like a line, but it is not a continuous line. Irrational numbers such as pi or the square root of 3 or the square root of 2 still reside between the dots. And if you want to go ahead and list out many of the digits for pi to reinforce that, this would be a good time to do that. After you use the warm-up question and the prompt with your students in a whole group type setting, there is a reminder here that it's time to go do explicit instruction involving the presentation of the scaffolding. Again, this scaffolding is the same notes that the students have access to. And when you're not available to answer their questions, these notes will be available to them. So it's important to stop and take a moment and present the information and the content that is in the notes. So going back to the lesson view, after the explicit instruction and presentation of scaffolding, next is the assignment of the activities that support the student mastery of sets and subsets of rational numbers. And these are activity 1, 2, 3, and 4. We'll go into this more, but they always begin with skill builders, then skill developers, skill extenders, and finally, skill checkers. Let's go look at another lesson view. This lesson is constant rate of change in proportions. It addresses these 3 targeted TEKS, these 5 additional TEKS, and you'll see in the warm-up question 2 parts, the prompt and the description for the students, that there's this underlined section that says be sure to show students the formula in the TEA chart, k equals y over x, and solve it for y equals kx. This is an important thing that you're going to notice throughout many of the lessons and even some of the activities, where the program specifically keeps the TEA chart engaged in the activities so that the students will be very confident in what the TEA chart includes and how to use it by the time that they complete the program. Let's take a look at another lesson. If we go back to the lesson on outcomes, events, and probabilities, you'll see here in the description that after each question, there's often an answer given. If the raffle was held now, what is Ty's chance to win? The answer here is 1 or 100%. Sell a ticket to another student. What are the possible outcomes now for Ty? Well, he could win or he could lose. What is the chance that Ty will win? 0.5. The reason I'm pointing out that there are answers embedded in the lesson view is that it's not really intended that the teacher display this lesson view. Rather, these are ideas for the teacher, again, that can be printed out from the TEKS alignment document. And those ideas, because we're talking to the teacher, sometimes include answers. So that's just something to be aware of. The notes view, on the other hand, is intended to be displayed during the whole group instruction. So let's go back to the main menu. We've already talked about the eligible TEKS and the student course notes and lesson views. Now let's look at the student activity book answer key. Once again, DynaNotes has provided the answer key in PDF form. And this color key shows the answers to each activity in red. So here's activity 1, types of rational numbers. And you can see the activity the way the student sees it, as well as the answers in red that the student should have placed in the proper locations. So the nice thing about this being a PDF is that it can be printed and used in a variety of ways. And if you look at the next part of the training, you'll see many ideas on how to use this answer key. One thing of note is that you'll notice the answer key in many cases, and where it makes sense, will show work. So this makes the answer key much more versatile and helpful to the students. Here we are in probability, but you can even see here that instead of just a final answer, it shows the student moving from 5/50ths through 1/10 to the decimal form 0.1 in order to arrive at the answer. Or in this problem, showing how the student performed the calculation to more easily arrive at the answer. You can also print it out, and this is an example of a printed out answer key page for activity 61, composite area problems. And in this case, you can see that the answer key works out the problem line by line with clarity so that the students can hopefully have a resource to help them figure out where they may have made a mistake or perhaps see another way to get to the right answer.